Hi, this is Rob Sanchez, and I'm here today with Germaine Shaw from Manifold Consulting. And Germaine is a geospatial software engineer and a real estate investor. And so I'd like her to tell you a little bit about what that means and what she's up to, and then we'll dive right in. Um, so, yeah.
Okay, so as you mentioned, I am a real estate investor by evening, but a developer by day. So, what that means is I'm a geospatial engineer. I work as a contractor for the federal government, and I integrate data with maps and create web based applications.
Cool. And on the investment side, you've been investing in the area where you live, like around where you live, um, not like nationwide. So, what got you into real estate investing? And just tell us a little bit about the kind of properties you're looking for and what you've been building.
Sure. I got into real estate investing in 2013. It was a mix of my children beginning to go off to college and thinking of ways to supplement my income. But it also was because I am a lover of HGTV. So Flipper Flop was very instrumental on my journey. I just like the process. I like the way that the show was narrated because a lot of the times they always made sure in every episode to show you that there would be some unexpecteds on the project. And so I am a fashionable girl. Even in the real estate, not just the real estate space, but the .NET developer space, you generally don't see people who look like me. So I'm usually the only brown girl in the room. I love fashion. I love trap music. So I like to make things look nice. And that's something that real estate development afforded me to do, to not only bring a home to life and do a project, but to think about the end buyer and what they may want, especially women, and then to incorporate some of those touches into my properties.
Yeah. When you're looking for, well, let's start with your first property. When you were looking for that one, what kind of made you say, okay, let's dive in and let's do it with this one? Do you remember back then?
I do. It was 2015, and I noticed there's one particular neighborhood not far from where I live that was going through a lot of development. And so I
Mhm.
happened to find a property that was on the auction, and the numbers just seemed to work. And so I decided at that point, I didn't really put much thought to it. I just said, okay, I'm ready to move forward. When something kind of hits me, that's how I am. So once it really kind of takes over my spirit and I decide that that's something that I want to do, I look for opportunities to take it to the next level. So I saw a property on the auction, I bid on it, and I won, and that started my journey.
Yeah. Um, when when you were working on the renovation for that house, what was the experience like? Did you run into anything unexpected on the first one, or did you get that lucky, like beginner's luck, like here's how we hook you type feeling?
So, no, it
Yeah.
was a bunch of learning. I picked a contractor that didn't have a lot of experience.
Hmm.
So, the first contractor that I was going to go into the project with, we didn't even get to day one, and I had already let him go.
Oh,
So, that was one of the first experiences that I got. And that's a continuous lesson learned, which is contractors are your biggest risk to a project.
yeah.
So, I found another contractor and we pretty much learned the entire process together. So I learned about permitting, I picked out finishes. Um, it was a full gut rehab. So I didn't start light, I jumped straight into 12 feet. It
Yep.
was a full gut project. My contractor left probably 2 months before we were supposed to go to market. He decided to take a vacation out of the country. And then I had to pull in other contractors to go over his work. I met one contractor specifically who taught me a lot about HVAC, and he walked the property with me and
Hmm.
he showed me all of the flaws and all of the areas where the work was basically subpar. So
Yeah.
I learned a lot about the quality of work on that project as well, and beginning to check behind my contractors. I think rule number one is if it doesn't look good, it's usually not good. So if your wires are not tacked down,
Yeah.
just the quality of work, how they keep the site, those things are very important to translating the quality of work that's being done.
Yeah. It's like the amount of care matters. Yeah.
If wires are all over the place, if your duct work is not nice and tight, I tell people all the time, duct work can be a very sexy thing. So and people
Yeah.
are usually laughing at me because they don't understand what that means. But if you don't have mastic tape on your joints, if you have, so I like to put my units in the attic if they're
Hmm.
not on hangers to make sure that airflow is moving through properly. If your registers and returns are not in the right place, if you haven't cut the drywall properly and you don't put the vents on there and everything is not sealed up nice and tight, that's a problem. So HVAC can be a very sexy, and so can electrical as well.
Yeah, electrical is amazing. I'm on this house that we're in. We're looking at it as like there's 5 breakers for a 1,300 square foot house. Like we just
Oh,
closed on our own. And it's like that doesn't work. That's something's probably wrong here. Now,
no.
3 of the breakers service the attic, so that's also not right.
Right,
Yeah. It's like microwave and then like washing machine and then attic. Like
right.
what? Yeah, so we've had a master electrician come in and he's been working with me and we basically like tore apart the house and have rerun. We're keeping 10 linear feet of wire, I think
Okay,
is the total.
okay.
And so it's not a gut, but it's pretty close, you know.
It's pretty close, especially when
Yeah.
you're dealing with electrical and how it feeds into the panel.
Yeah.
Again, it should look sexy. It
Yeah.
should be
Yep.
nice and clean. Everything should be properly identified, tethered
Yeah.
together. You should not open up that panel and remove the front and it looks crazy on the behind side of it.
Right.
So again, you can always use visuals. It tells you a lot. If it doesn't look right, if it looks jumbled up and
Yeah.
messy and things don't make sense and they're not organized, then that's speaking to that person as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah. One of the things that I mean, we were talking about before we hopped on, we were talking a little bit about like what's behind the wall and
Absolutely.
like how do you see?
Absolutely.
And yeah, that's where everything gets really interesting too. Now, if you're doing a full gut, you get to see behind the wall.
Hmm.
Um, when you have you done any that weren't full? Like, have you done anything cosmetic? I think you
Yeah.
said you had one, right?
I
Yeah.
have done some cosmetic projects. I've probably done two. So altogether, I've done 5 flips. I've done some wholesale deals, and recently I've gotten into buying and holding on
Hmm.
the Eastern Shore in Salisbury, Maryland, which is about 45 minutes outside of Ocean City, maybe just a little bit less. So the project over there was not a full gut, and some of my flips were not a full gut. But what I will say is when you're not going behind the walls, but you maybe just are opening up 1 or 2 walls, you need to have a nice size contingency budget because all of your money is takes place behind the walls because that's what requires your master journeyman from your electrician to
Yeah,
your plumber to your HVAC guy. And once you see something, you technically
you can't
cannot
unsee it.
unsee it unless you're just not a good developer putting out a good product. And
Right.
so that's what separates a great project from a mediocre project. There's a term that they like to use, which is lipstick on a pig, which is we're just going to come in, make it look beautiful, but we're not going to address any of the pain points because we're flipping it and we're going to pass it on to the end buyer. I don't subscribe to that mindset. So the older the property is, the higher my contingency funds.
Yeah. Um, so I connected with you after a post that I thought was pretty interesting. So you you had a house
Mhm.
where you were supposed to just add framing,
Correct.
and I think like what was it? You found some termite signs in it. So you're and as you look closer, like, do you want to walk through what that was and what happened?
Sure. So I bought this older property completely unkept. The owner probably hadn't done anything with the property the entire time that they owned it. So they were definitely a slumlord. So I went into the property knowing that we would have to reconfigure the existing space. It was 600 square feet. And then we were adding on an additional 900 square feet to bring it to a 1,500 square foot property.
Yeah.
So on a Friday morning, I got a message that said, Germaine, this is the roof. Everything about the roof, the entire structure of the roof is no good. We will have to redo everything. And I got a picture with the
Hmm.
house without the roof. So I'm like, okay. A couple of hours later, I get another picture and it's of the foundation, but I don't really know what I'm looking at. And so I'm calling my contractor and I'm like, well, what is this? And he was like, this is the reason why we have to demo the existing structure. So Friday morning, I thought that I just needed to replace the roof and the supporting structure of the roof. And Friday afternoon, I got another picture where we were down to just the foundation that we were able to save. And so we went from a renovation to new construction.
Yeah, yeah,
So now I have the ability to say that I have a new construction project under my hat as well.
yeah, yeah. That's pretty amazing. I mean, once you start uncovering stuff and it just like snowballs, it gets real interesting real fast.
Yes, I called my contractor and I'm just like, so how did we miss this? And he was like, Germaine, we couldn't have anticipated this. We went in, you go in and you look for signs of termite damage. But he says, and I have to trust him at this point, he's been good to me, that this wasn't something that we necessarily could have been able to catch because we weren't able to look behind the walls. So
Yeah,
once we started to peel the layers back, that's when we saw the extent of the damage. And then it wasn't just a matter of trying to band-aid it. We just
yeah.
had to demo the structure.
Yeah, from what I remember you saying, it was like termites started at the top and they'd worked all the way down through the entire structure. And at that
Yes,
point, it's
they ate the
you
whole
come
house.
back to the last impacted point, right? And that's the if that's the
Yes.
foundation, that's the foundation. Yeah.
To coin a phrase of my uncle, they dined sufficiently. They ate the entire wood structure of that home. It
Oh,
was nothing was salvageable but a
yeah.
little bit of the foundation. So I'm definitely thankful for that. And I'm also thankful that I had a contingency fund. I didn't know that post would spark
Yeah.
so many questions and so much confusion, but it was definitely a great learning lesson to share.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that you'd said in the post that I thought that was really good was that you had already planned for a full gut.
Correct.
So your contingency only had to cover framing.
Correct. The exterior framing.
And probably like permitting and stuff like that, right? Like you probably had some revisions you had to file on that or something. Or did you have to get new plans? Or were
No,
you
we didn't have to get new
okay?
plans because we kept the existing structure the same. We stayed with the original plan. So
Yeah,
the only thing that we really had to do was to submit an addendum to say that we were going to rebuild the existing structure, but we were still going to follow the plans that
yeah.
were accepted by the permitting office. So
Oh, okay,
that
okay.
was a fairly easy process. And then again, it was just getting the exterior wood because we were already replacing the windows,
Yeah.
the interior lumber, and everything else along with it. So it really was just getting the lumber for the project and the labor that went along with it. And for some reason, that really wasn't accepted well by certain people. They
Oh,
thought that
yeah.
I was HGTV fishing, but if you don't know the scope of my budget,
Right, right. That's where like one clarifying question
right?
might have helped
Ask
you
me.
there. Yeah.
Someone asked me to show receipts. I thought that
Yeah.
was funny too.
Yeah, that was insane. I mean, that's the one thing I don't like about a lot of these groups. There's some amazing people in a lot of the like Burr groups and
Hmm.
investment groups. And then there's a couple people that, why aren't you out there working?
You know, I
Maybe
call
you
it
should
my
do that instead of posting.
I call it my gurus. You
Yeah.
know, you have your SMEs who, for whatever reason, know absolutely nothing about your project. They don't know the details. They don't know the scope of work. But somehow, through real estate magic, they are able to get on social media and tell you that you're lying about everything that you're saying without understanding anything about what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
But I like those kind of questions because I like to respond to those the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's an
And
educational moment for me.
what I loved was like your responses were thorough on like
Yes.
on everything. I mean, the reason I reached out was like, okay, you know your stuff. It's
Yes.
really clear you know your stuff.
Right.
And like the thought process I thought was really good. And as you said, it's not HGTV, right? Like it's you've been there and done that,
Right.
and you know how to like handle it. Um so yeah, I mean that was exciting for me. It was like I don't know anyone who's had termites eat an entire house on them.
I think the responses were just a byproduct of my intent when I made the post.
Yeah.
So the intention behind the post is when you're in a lot of these real estate forums, a person will show you a before and an after,
Yeah.
but they won't give you any glimpse into the middle process and all of the headaches, or they'll touch on it lightly, but they really won't give you an in-depth explanation about what's going on. So when someone's asking me in the comments about numbers, I'm going to give you the numbers because I want you to understand what this process looks like. A lot of people are sitting on the sidelines and trying to decide, is this a space that they really want to enter? And so you can read all you want to, you can look at all the YouTube videos, but you are going to encounter problems. And the bigger the scope of the project or the older the home and the lack of maintenance that's taken place with that home over the years, generally, the bigger your contingency fund needs to be, because it's going to be riddled with a lot of issues. And
Yeah.
so that's just what I encountered: a house that wasn't well maintained. It was sitting for many years. I'll give you one of the funniest things about this particular property is that it was a trap house. So the drug dealers used this house as their site of their operations. And there was actually a sign on the front door that said, "We will return with a clock." And when they left, they would take time to let everybody know when they were
Yeah.
coming back. So I thought that was
Yeah.
just hilarious. But
Yeah.
as far as responding to the questions, so I'm an engineer. I'm in a very male dominated space of non-melanated individuals who do not look like me. And so oftentimes when I show up at work, I am the business analyst, I am the project manager, I'm the scrum master, I'm anybody on the business side, but I'm never the technical person. So I'm
Yeah.
always discounted to a certain extent, where people feel like she couldn't possibly know what she's doing because she's a girl, and guys don't always like to play nicely in a space with girls. So when I saw those comments, it was just an extension of things that I encounter at work. But the easy thing to do is to respond and be negative, but it's really a teachable moment, especially for anybody
Yeah.
who's coming behind that person and reading the comments, to help educate them about the process and get a little bit of enlightenment. So that was my approach in responding to those posts.
Yeah, and that was what I really appreciated about the entire conversation. I could look behind. I probably hit the post like an hour or two after you had posted it, and I could see like, okay, this is actually, I'm learning a lot. This is great.
Right,
And yeah, that was I wouldn't say it's unexpected to see posts like that. I mean, people are ridiculous.
right.
But like it was really helpful to be able to like, okay, I can actually read this and learn. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, so I appreciated that.
Well, thank you. That was my
Yeah,
goal. That was
yeah,
definitely my goal. I got a couple of comments from women saying, you're doing a lot of explaining, but it's not explaining, it's teaching. The
yeah,
easiest thing to do is to respond and to be rude. And I feel like there's just a sentiment in this country overall right now, sometimes, where the tone is not the proper tone. If
yeah,
you want someone to understand where you're coming from, your tone has to reflect that. And so I didn't want to come across nasty. I just wanted to make sure that I educate. Now, if you felt a certain type of way in my response, that's fine too. But I really just
yeah,
wanted to educate and make sure that you understood, I know what I'm doing. This is not my first rodeo. And you're making a lot of assumptions that you just can't make based on two pictures. You
yeah,
really have to know the scope of the work, the budget, and what my intention was going into that project, to really understand why demoing the house didn't cost me $20,000, $30,000. It really just cost me $14,000. But on the other side of things, I went from an existing property with a great rehab to now new construction. So the
right,
property value inherently goes up when it falls under the category of being new construction and not just a rehab.
yeah,
So I make that back.
yeah.
Plus,
And that's also an interesting side of it too. So the numbers on it, you're holding that space, or are you flipping it?
no, I'm holding that
Yeah,
space. So in Salisbury, particularly, I like affordable housing. When you're inside of some of these real estate forums, you get the nice so the not no the not so nice side of real estate, which is people's perceptions of who a Section 8 holder is, for an example. What does that look like? Who are these people? And for me, any mother, any family with children, you want to be in a nice space, whether you're in an A class neighborhood or D class neighborhood.
Right.
You still can have nice flooring, LVP instead of hardwoods. You can still have color on the wall. You can still have tile in the bathroom. You can still have stainless steel appliances. A lot of time I will get pushback from my contractor and he'll say, you could have saved $6,000 to $9,000 on this project. But the reality is when I get an appraisal, I generally recoup all of that. And even if I don't recoup a couple $1,000s, that's
You'll
a
get a
product, that's
good
my
tenant who
name, and
cares.
that's
Yeah,
associated with me. So I
got
want
it.
to provide good quality housing regardless of what the neighborhood is.
So you're basically building a brand at the same time. Is that how you're thinking of it? Like if somebody comes and they find a house by you, they're going to
Correct.
know that it's better.
I'm
Are
not
you
leaving.
thinking about tenant attraction at the same time?
I
Um,
do. I
yeah.
do. I think about who is the person who's going to rent my home. So generally it's somebody on Section 8. They're in a working class neighborhood, especially if you've looked at anything that's for rent in Salisbury.
Hmm.
It is awful. I
Yeah.
mean, the landlords are slumlords. Most people in that town do not own their property. Most landlords do not provide a quality product. They give you the
Hmm.
basic minimum of what's required to qualify for Section 8, and that's it. So when I post my projects, I get renters very quickly. I
Hmm.
keep my renters longer because I'm a very responsive landlord and I just want to give a good quality product. And so you don't have to deal with turnover rate as much.
Hmm.
You're getting paid by the state, so you get your funds all the time. And also, it's me making an impact and giving back to my community by coming in and doing something high quality or of higher quality than what most individuals are used to seeing when renting in those type of neighborhoods.
Yeah. You're actually the second person I've interviewed. Well, it was a pair, but they were working up in Canada with a similar model. And it's amazing that it's really successful. It
Mhm.
doesn't matter that you're losing $1,000 here or there because you're making it up with a low vacancy rate. You're making it up
Correct.
with more tenants to choose from and things like that. So long term your finances are probably better and you probably have fewer repairs on your property and fewer complaints.
Well, and I use the BRRRR process. So the
Yeah.
BRRRR process is buy, rehab, refinance, rent, and repeat. And so just by using the BRRRR process to create these products, you do want to make sure that they are of high quality, and you do want to make sure that you don't have to come in and make a lot of repairs. So that's what BRRRR allows you to do. If I come in and I totally get a distressed project, then I do know what I'm getting into because I'm replacing the
Mhm.
wiring, I'm replacing the HVAC. So all the systems are new. So that budget that you have set aside for repairs, it's a lot smaller in the
Yeah.
first 5 to 10 years because you've already come in and you've already updated everything that's behind the wall, which is where all of your money tends to go. Once you
Yeah.
get to closing, that's when the party starts because you've overcome all of your hurdles
Yeah.
and you're ready to just close in, put in your products and move forward. It's what's behind the walls that really do cost you money. So my strategy does allow me to address those pain points in the beginning and not have to have a really big contingency fund for repairs on the side.
Now, do you document what's behind the walls? Like, how are you tracking it over time? This is like a question I have on the house that I'm working on right now. Is if I know where everything is, does it make my repairs less? Like, if I know what wall to cut, if I know where a wire is run or something like that, or does it matter? Because I feel
Um,
like we close a wall and we forget about it. You know?
So behind the walls is really just your electrical, your pipes. Especially with your electrical is tacked along your framing. So you pretty much do know where
Hmm.
everything is. You can see where your vents are, so you know where the ductwork is running to and things like that. Um, what it does help you do when you buy a distressed property is you can pick and choose where you want to put your money. So you may say, okay, I bought this property and it has a roof that's 10 years and it's pretty good. So I'm going to focus on the electrical, I'm going to focus on the plumbing, but then I'll put it in my budget to come back in maybe 2 or 3 years and I'll address
Mhm.
the roof because it still has some life to it. So that's what buying and bringing up a distressed property allows you to do, as opposed to something that's turnkey. So when you're buying
Yeah.
something that's turnkey, you really don't know what's going on because you're just coming in, you're buying it, and you're putting in a tenant. So you may not know. You can look at the panel, but you may not know what's going on with some things with the electrical or the plumbing. I feel like you're a little bit more open to having to do more repairs.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. So you'd need a larger operating contingency for a project where you just know the surface.
Correct. I
Yeah.
think so. I think so. Somebody else
Yeah.
may not agree with me, but that's how I go
Yeah.
into it.
I
But
think that's a good rule of thumb.
mhm.
Because so we bought a house from 1920,
Ooh,
and
I
so
like
far,
those.
they're the best. They're the best. And it's like, I'll put it this way: I tried to hammer a mending plate into one of our roof joists, and it took me 20 minutes to hammer it in because the wood was like that hard, like
Mhm.
pine resin filled, like it's
Quality.
not going anywhere.
Exactly. That is
So
quality that we
yeah,
don't see anymore.
yeah, yep. And I mean, like, yeah, I can see the tar paper through the roof,
Mhm.
and that's a problem.
Right.
But like, that's a fixable problem, and I
Absolutely.
can't go and buy the same lumber ever again.
No, you can't.
So
And that's the other thing with newer homes. They're just not as well constructed. So there's a great respect that I have for the older homes because of the craftsmanship and the quality and the time that was taken. I feel like now houses are thrown up so quickly that that same
yeah,
care and that same quality and that same craftsmanship doesn't go into the end product. So I do like taking an older home and restoring it to its beauty because it's still of quality, and
yeah.
sometimes it's less problematic than some of these newer properties.
I mean, I gotta say, we got kind of lucky on this one because a friend of mine who bought a house that was made in the 80s. I mean, he has so many problems,
See?
so many problems,
Exactly.
and even houses that were built fairly recently. But there's also like weird things that I never would have known, like the house's balloon frames. I don't
Okay.
know if you've run into that before, but
I don't think so.
basically, like, we have a breeze in the attic
Okay.
because the wind just circulates all the way around. So if there's a fire in the house, it gets sucked up and spread through the whole structure.
Oh,
So that's a problem,
so
right?
how do you address that?
So what we're doing is dense packed cellulose.
Okay.
So as I started researching dense packed cellulose, we had a lot of things like we didn't put armor cables in on the electrical because we had to fish the entire house. We're rerunning the entire house and we're not disturbing the walls. So that's hard. So we
Yes.
decided to go with like just flexible wires, like the standard wires instead of armor cable.
Okay.
So when we made that decision, the concern is, will rodents eat it? Well, dense pack is like it's basically rodent proof. It has borate in it.
Okay.
If they eat it, it's a salt that makes it so that they seek water. They end up leaving the structure, um, and like this is all stuff I learned recently, and
Right.
like
Well,
and
you
they were
learn some
also
good stuff.
saying that the dense pack itself is hard for the mouse to chew. They have to excavate it instead of
Mhm.
like with a fiberglass or a foam, they can nest in it and they use it as nesting materials. They
Right.
don't do that with cellulose.
Okay.
So learning some of these things, and so we're bringing specialists in and just packing every balloon frame, but it's really easy because you literally just start at the top, and I don't have to cut any floors or anything.
Oh,
Um, you can go through the entire structure, and then we're replacing all the siding and the roof, so all the places they would have had to cut are going to be open anyways.
okay.
Um,
That's
and
I'm gonna have to call you when I get a I think
yeah,
I'll do it. So expense wise, does it cost a little more in comparison to what you generally would have used? Where does the pricing fit with that?
so the actual material itself is probably about the same.
Okay.
The issue is that you need somebody who actually knows what they're doing. Like a lot of people come in and blow in insulation,
Right.
and they're not actually packing it. And if you don't know how to do the packing, what you end up with is it just settles over time, and you don't get any of the rodent proofing or anything else. It's just like they can tunnel through it easily, and so you actually need experts at the process, and that's
Hmm.
where your cost is coming in. So
I,
material's cheap though.
I feel like we're right back to my original sentiment, which is contractors are one of your biggest
Yeah.
risks to a project.
Yep. Yep.
Getting a good contractor who stands by their work and does a quality job, you just got to pay for that. And that was another lesson that I learned on a
Exactly.
project as well.
Yeah.
Trying to be cheap with the contractors only costs you a lot more money in the end. So,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know. I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to.
And the other one, hemp wool, we're starting to play with in the house. We're looking at that, which is it's got the same R value as traditional um, uh, insulation, like the fiberglass and foam.
Hmm.
And it's pretty easy to work with, but it's a lot more breathable and a lot safer than
Okay.
some of those other products. Um, and like the fire rating on it is great. So foam burns, uh,
Right.
and this, like, you can light it and it chars instead of burning.
Right.
So you don't get that same, like, if foam hits a certain temperature, it flashes and you
Right.
basically explode.
Right.
um, and we don't have that issue with this, and it's an all natural fiber, and the cost isn't that high. So that's kind of what we're trying to do right now in the house, is like figure out. The other thing that we were told that we're looking into right now is that the old school tar paper actually
Hmm.
holds up longer than the
Yes.
Tyvek.
Yes.
And so we're going back to the guys that are quoting the house and basically like saying, "Hey, can you do that?"
Right.
I know that Tyvek is your process, but like, what's it going to cost us to have you like go back in time and and do it that
Yeah.
way?
I just it's just amazing to see some of the things that we use now and how they are so counterproductive to the
Yeah,
longevity and the quality of a home. And so that's not missed on me. So with my older projects, I do try to keep a lot of the older siding because my contractors say a lot of the older siding was built in such a way that it burns slower if it's a fire.
yeah,
So you have to take these things into consideration as well. It does sound good to get what are the latest things that are out, but does it make sense and will the house really hold its quality over and stand the test of time?
yeah,
And then if you want to go retro, can you find a contractor that can actually do the work? Because I like older contractors. I'm not going to
yeah,
lie to you. A lot of my staff are 50s and 60s. They just do great quality work,
yeah,
and I don't always see that translate with some of the,
yeah. The
not
hard
to
thing
be
in
an
this
ageist or
area,
anything, but
well,
it's hard.
we're finding the same thing here. So we were going by recommendations in the town. So the secret is just like trolling Facebook groups of moms and who do they like, who do
Right,
they recommend,
right.
right? And that's like my wife was doing a ton of research, and she came up with this list of names, and everybody on it is 65. And
Mhm.
then you call them up and they're like, "Yeah, well, we're only taking 2 jobs this year. We're available in
Right.
April." And it's like, come
And
on.
that's what you want.
so so we are is like, I'm a measure twice or measure once, cut twice kind of guy. Like, but
Okay.
like, let's be honest, I'm great at demo and I'm not great at finish work. And so what I've been doing is like, we'll call up the contractors, and they're like, "Well, I'm not available till whenever." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I'm just going to keep working on this,
Right,
and you come in at the end when you're available and finish it, please. But like, I can't wait for you. And if
right.
you start in 8 months, we're not going to be able to move into our house. So I'm just going to keep puttering along, and at some point we'll catch up." you know? And
So, with
yeah,
your puttering along, how did you build up your skill set? I know you said you bought a house, and I'm hearing that you're doing the work.
yeah,
So, are you a YouTube guy? Do you go to workshops? Is it something that you've always known how to do from childhood? How did you kind of?
yeah. So
I don't
I
want to get
I
my
have a
hands dirty at
really
all.
weird background, and that's
Okay.
part of it. So first off, I'm on the autism spectrum, and I'm a tactile learner.
Okay.
So it's like I process information through my hands anyways. So that I think gives me a leg up. But in high school, I worked for the Agricultural Research Service, and
Yes.
I built weather stations. And so I have a lot of like, I know how to weld, I know how to cut metal, like, like I can bend metal. I know that sort of stuff from high school. Um, and we did some construction work at home, and my dad's a perfectionist, but I was a little bit too young. Like my older brother did most of the work.
Right.
He worked on a landscaping crew. So like I saw stuff, but I didn't really do it. But here is just like, I look at a YouTube video and I get enough knowledge to be dangerous, and then I
Right.
grab a sledgehammer and get going. But it's like I have to do it anyways.
Right.
So I might as well do it on my house, and it's my house, so I care enough to go slow enough not to screw something up.
Okay.
Um,
YouTube you.
yeah, yep. YouTube you. And it works a lot. I read a lot. And so I've been reading the Black and Decker Home Improvement series. They have
Okay.
some great books with picture tutorials on how to do things, and their techniques work really well. So I've been repairing the molding. So I can show you here. We have like that old school, like beautiful
Yes.
molding.
It's beautiful.
And so I've been able to like pop that off using techniques that they showed in the book, like using the painter's knife and getting it out enough to put the wedge behind it and then pulling it off. The fact that you pull the nails out the back of it instead of the front, like I never would have known that if I hadn't read a book about it.
Okay.
Um, but then I've been combining that with like, I'm using Cooper Strip Club to do the stripping of it instead of sanding it,
Okay.
because it doesn't change the surface shape. Now
Hmm.
it smells horrible,
Right.
but it like takes 2 minutes. I'm able to strip the entire piece of siding in 2 minutes,
Oh,
and
that's really interesting.
that's like night and day compared with sanding. Um, yeah,
So are you going to apply these skills to your next project? Are you going to
yeah,
work on your properties? Do you think you're going to get a crew? Because for me, it's just about a crew. I have sanded a floor one time on one of my
yeah,
previous projects. That falls into that being cheap with your contractor category. And I had my floors done and they were beautiful, and all they needed was the top coat. And another contractor came in and they messed up my floors. So I had to restrip them, and at that point, it was probably $2,000 that we had paid to get those floors done. That was down the drain. So me and my
yeah,
husband went in the evenings and we looked it up on YouTube U, and we
yeah,
figured it out. And the floors came out really, really nicely.
yeah.
Really, really nice.
If you have finished work that's good and the paint layer or the shellac layer it gets screwed up, definitely test out the Cooper Strip Club stuff,
Okay.
because
Okay.
it's designed to not mar the last sanding job. So it basically
Oh.
pulls everything out of the grain and bubbles
Hmm.
it to the surface, and then you just scrape it off. So you're not actually touching the wood. I mean, well, like you're scraping the wood. You have to be careful you don't cut it, but you scrape it and then you scrub it with a grit pad, and it comes off, and it's amazing.
I so needed this information.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
redid that floor a few times
Oh,
before we got it right. I just couldn't believe
yeah,
I
yeah.
messed up my
Well, it's not
beautiful
cheap.
dark wood floors.
The
Yes.
the
Okay.
stripper's not cheap, but it might be cheaper than the labor.
Right. It would have saved me some time. I think that was my last foray into carpentry work. And
Yeah,
so
yeah,
now it's just let me find a great crew who
yeah,
does a good quality job. I just want to be hands off in the process. I really just want to come in when it's time to pick out the finishes. I do not let my contractors pick out finishes. I send them a sheet
yeah,
actually as a guide at the beginning of the project to let them know what color paint I want, what color flooring I want, what I want the fixtures to look like, so that you have a general idea of what it is that I want. And if you don't have it in inventory, then I will buy it myself because I am
yeah,
very picky, to almost to the point of being problematic. You just
yeah,
don't want to make me upset when it comes to my finishes. You can have behind the walls all you want to, but
yeah,
anything after closing, it's showtime. This is my baby, and you have to let me step into this space and create. But now I pretty much use a template. So on all of my projects now, they're looking the same pretty much
yeah.
from flooring to wall color to fixtures moving forward. So it makes things pretty easy.
That's good. Yeah, what we've done is I have wholesale accounts with a lot of the local distributors. So
Okay.
if a contractor either is going to be slow getting me stuff or is going to upcharge too high or just wants to come in and like what I'm finding is I'm getting the contractors and they're saying like, well, this guy who does this one skill is available
Mm,
for 3 hours on this day. If you have the materials ready, I can loan him to you.
right.
And so that's probably how we're going to end up doing this house is like I'm going to have a specialist from 8 different crews and I'm going to be the GC. So with that in mind, it's just like I drive down to ABC, I've got my account with them, I rent a truck and load it up and bring it out to the house. And that's going to be how we do most of this.
Okay.
As far as like my plan going forward, I love working with a ton of people. I don't like to have one crew because
Really?
yeah, it like I like everybody has weaknesses and strengths,
Okay.
and also not everybody's available. Up
Right.
here, I mean, we're in Orange County in New York, and the wait times are 4 weeks to 4 months to get
Right.
somebody in, and that doesn't work with carrying costs on a flip.
No,
Um,
no, it does not.
yeah, so like if I'm friends with everybody and I know somebody has a spare cycle, that's how we got a master electrician in here. He
Mm,
he had 4 weekends free this month, and I was like, great, you're booked, you
right.
know. And otherwise, I would have been. I think the next available spot with the guys on his crew were like months out. So
Mm.
yeah, so that's just how it's going right now.
So, with the supply chain being broken,
Yeah.
has that affected your ability to acquire materials? I know for me, we have to do a lot of pre-planning at the beginning of the project with my last two projects. And I think that I'm about to take on another one. And
Hmm.
I've tried to do a temperature check with my contractor to see where things are. And according to him, not much has changed, at least from his standpoint. We need to do the pre-planning and the buying to make sure that we have things coming in on time, because it's still a bit of a weight that exists to get certain things. They're
Yeah,
just not
specialty
on
projects
the
for sure. Yeah,
Mhm. Okay.
definitely seeing that. But the wood futures just crashed, and
Oh,
that market is getting much nicer for the builder.
okay.
So I think it's like down to 410 or something like that. So I mean,
Oh,
it just crashed. So that's
because
going to be good.
it
That
was
was
at
like
like
this week.
1,600
Yeah,
a square foot or something like that at the beginning of the year. We hit
yeah,
2,200 or something like that last summer, which is
yeah. It
when I
is.
did my project. So
It's in the
I
hundreds
actually
again.
I actually signed the contract, and there was a 3-month lag in when we started. And before we moved forward, no, I didn't sign the contract. He gave me a quote. And
Mm,
I waited probably 2 months to come in and sign the contract. And when I came in, he slid me an addendum that said, lumber has gone up. You didn't lock the project in at this price. We're going to have to split the cost. And so that also added an
yeah,
additional, I want to say $6,000 to $8,000 to my budget at the
yeah,
time. And that was prior to us having to demo the existing
yeah,
structure and adding in those additional costs. But I think now the newest thing is rates. So every day that I'm holding this project is costing me money, because that's less money that I'm going to cash flow because of the increase in the interest rates.
yeah, yeah. The interest rates are rough. So when we bought this place, we got a little bit lucky. It was 45 days from clear to close to actual close because of the
Okay.
lawyer on the other side. Just a nightmare, like Pony Express style crap. Physical signatures on the same sheet of paper to 9
Mm.
heirs sent one at a time,
Oh,
in
wow.
3 different states.
Wow.
It was like, my God, use DocSend or
Right.
DocuSign or like
Something.
anything. Like,
Was
like
he old school?
yeah, yeah. I mean, he should have retired years ago. Like
Okay.
it was bad. It was really bad. But anyways, like that, you know, that meant that we went from a 4.8 to a 5.8.
Right.
And the day we signed, it went to 6.8. So we were locked in, so we didn't get hit by that.
Right.
But our lock expired the day we signed. And
Mm.
the next day, if we hadn't gotten it closed that day, we would have been at 6.8.
Yeah, these interest
So
rates right now are game changers in
yeah,
how you evaluate a project. I see a lot of people talking about, well, you're only complaining if you're a newbie, which I guess I am because I haven't known rates to be this high.
yeah,
I've only been in the game since 2015. So for me, it's definitely an adjustment, but I don't let it keep me from moving forward with most projects because
yeah,
I just feel like we're not going to stay here forever. And if the
yeah.
numbers work, the numbers just work.
Exactly.
I'm a numbers
I
girl.
that's it, right? Like it's the numbers. It doesn't matter if it's 12 as long as the numbers work.
Right. It doesn't.
And like my parents bought their first house at 12%, right?
Right.
Like that was what the market was, and people
Mhm.
still invested in real estate. And
Absolutely.
it's just like you're either good at the math or you're not,
Right.
right? I think that's it.
Either you're good at the math or you're not, and you have to be able to just look at the numbers and be very unemotional about it. I
Right.
think a part of me learning from my mistakes is I used to go into projects and I used to over engineer them. I want to
Mhm.
do that right now. So, as a learning lesson, even with this project, when I got the plans, I really didn't pay attention to there are two bedrooms in the back.
Mhm.
And I don't know how I missed it until I walked this property this past weekend, but there's a hallway between these two bedrooms that leads to a back door to the backyard. And I'm like, why isn't the door in the kitchen? And my contractor is like, Germaine, we sent this to you and you signed off on it. And I had to go back and I had to look. And I was like, oh,
Yep.
so I want to change it. And he's like, well, it's going to cost you this, this, and this. And it's really not going to add value to your bottom lines. It's still the nicest house in the neighborhood and
Yep.
it's still going to appraise where you need it to appraise. So, yes, you can do it at, you take a hit on your profits, or you just check it up to a lesson learned and you just move forward and you look at these plans a little bit more in detail the next time. So, I'm a perfectionist. I really want to get rid of that hallway and move the door, but then I'm gonna have to move electrical. I'm gonna have to move
Yeah.
HVAC. So it's really just not worth it. It kills me to have this hallway sitting between these two rooms when I know I could have
Yeah.
used that
You mean the
space.
two-sided walk-in closet with accessibility from the outside? Right?
Man, I kicked myself so many times this past weekend. I'm like, how
Yeah.
did you miss that? But sometimes I feel like you get to be so busy. I have to really make sure that when I'm reviewing my plans that I slow down and I
Yeah.
really take a moment because I am a visual person to make sure that I'm visualizing what it is that I'm looking at. And sometimes there's a disconnect for me for because of the way I process information. But lesson learned, I will never make that mistake again. It will not happen. It will not happen.
Yeah. But you'll add another one. That's the way this goes, right?
When I get ready to sell the property, I'm going to address these issues.
Yeah.
I think, but I don't see me
And
selling it. I really like Salisbury. I really like affordable housing. A lot of people tell me you should get into short-term rentals and things like
yeah.
that. But I just try to let everybody know real estate, there's a million ways that you can slice this pie. And some people want to cash flow $100 a door. Some people want to cash flow $500 a door. Some people don't mind breaking even. They're in it for the equity. So you really have to come up with what your strategy is and be comfortable with that, because conversations with other investors, yes, you can learn from other people, but you still have to know what it is that you're doing, what you're looking at. So in Salisbury, I generally get properties that are under 100K on purchase. They're generally 50% of the ARV, and I do everything from mild to full gut rehabs, but I'm a
Yeah.
numbers girl. So as long as those numbers work, I'm pretty cool with that.
Yeah. That's great. That's a good spot to start wrapping up. We're at the end
Okay.
of time. I do want to just say I love the focus. I love like the way that you're approaching it. Thanks for sharing with us. And do you
Thank
have any
you.
final thoughts you want to leave people with, or do you? Yeah.
I just You know, I think as we move into these very uncertain times, as far as what's going on with the economy and interest rates, I still think that real estate is a great space to be when you have most millionaires having real estate as a part of their portfolio. I think 80% of millionaires have real estate as a part of their portfolio. I do think it is a good place for individuals in working class or middle class to build generational wealth and get their piece of the American pie. And I just encourage people to not let these interest rates scare you. You know, find your plan, come up with your plan, tweak your plan, but real estate is still a really good space to be in these days.
Excellent. All right. Well, in there. Thank you.
Thank you.